Sustain267.
Welcome to the Sustain267 Podcast, where we host conversations on climate change and the environment in Botswana and the rest of Africa. I am your host, Patukili Sidze. This is the second episode of an 8-part series of conversations that we will be sharing with you from the 2021 Global South Women's Forum on Sustainable Development, hosted by the International Women's Rights Action Watch Asia Pacific, a feminist organization committed to a full realization of women's human rights through the pursuit of equality. This session was titled Women Hold Up the Sky, African Women Rise for Climate Justice, and it's a conversation around a documentary by the same name. The link to the full documentary is in the episode notes. The Women Hold Up the Sky film was produced by WoMin African Alliance, and it explores the stories of resilience in communities, an active struggle to take back control of their land, their rights, their bodies and lives, realities and experiences of voices impacted by coal, oil and mega infrastructure projects in South Africa, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The session was moderated by Maggie Mapondera, the Communications and Media Coordinator at WoMin. She is in conversation with two women who are either involved in the film or are deeply connected to the stories in the film. She is joined by Beatrice Rukanyanga, who is with the Kwataniza Women's Farmer Group from Uganda, and Salome Elolo, who is part of the Femme Solidaire from the Democratic Republic of Congo. To open the conversation, Maggie asks Beatrice that, as a member of a community affected by extractivism, how that struggle has affected her community and how that struggle is unfolding.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Beatrice, and I would want to share the experience in relation to the film. As we talk now, oil exploration activities are still going on, and the land acquisition processes are still continuing, especially now in regard to the pipeline, the crude oil pipeline, and the feeder oil pipeline. So that means that still the processes of land acquisition have not taken care of women. You know very well in Uganda, the biggest number of women are not legally married. And the Ugandan's law states that for any compensation on the family property to be considered on a woman, it must be a woman that is legally married. So still, we find that the women who are not legally married and they're just cohabiting, they still get suppressed over compensation. You very well know that the biggest percentage of women, they are the ones that work on land. They are the ones that keep land and protect land. But when it comes to ownership, control, and access, they are limited in a way. So it is kind of a vicious circle, a continuing process, which we have to continue fighting and resisting. And also when it comes to issues of environmental destruction, the way you see in the film where when they are constructing the Inga Dam, they are putting a lot of power lines. It is the same way here in Uganda. There is high destruction of Bugoma forest, the way you might have heard on social media and other media platforms. There is great destruction of Bugoma forest, which has been very useful in terms of modifying the climate, in terms of getting food, in terms of getting construction materials. And you know, a woman heavily depends on climate for livelihood. And we are the sole producers of food on table. So when such a natural forest is destroyed, it is the woman who will suffer most. And also, you know, there is also an issue of pipeline, an industrial park that is under construction within the refinery area. A majority of the people who have been given jobs, majority of the people who have been given services to provide So in catering, in cleaning, it is basically the main companies that have been given such kinds of opportunities. So we feel that we need to still continue struggling and energizing the women. You know, currently we are undertaking our struggles through music, dance, and drama, the way it is in the film. So women, grassroots women are organizing, putting up drama, putting up plays and music to inform the authorities that such kinds of oppressions are still going on and we need redress as soon as possible. So I think that is how briefly I can comment on the film. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. I think there's a lot of power in what you have said and in the way that women are organizing and struggling. So thank you for sharing that. Salome, FESO from Solidaire, your organization supports women who are impacted by Inga. Could you tell us a little bit more about the struggle and expand on the film?
Yeah, as we all watch the film, you can see that those are the same community that gave their land for Inga 1 and 2. So by Inga 1 and 2, they were promised to have schools, hospitals, and works. But what they did, they've never gave work to that community. They took people from another province to come and do labor work there, but they've never received any work. So there's no coming and telling them that we are going to build another dam. You did not do anything for us. And they're like, okay, 1 or 2, we were not around. It wasn't us. So these 3, it's us. We are promising you, we'll give you hospitals, we'll give you schools. And they were like, it's just the same. But the problem is that the women, they don't have a voice or a say in it. So the ones that make decisions there has in the community, it's only men that are there, not even women. So that is it's a big struggle. So what we do, we inform the women, we give them voice to speak up, even if they are not give them voice to speak up. That women are raising their voice higher than men. So by now you can see that women are doing their best to lift their voice higher and speak and make decisions. Although men are trying to get their voices there, but women are really working hard to get their voice there because community to come here in Kinshasa and to meet the authorities. And you saw women who were talking, they were not afraid. They were expressing what they were feeling and they were saying, no, we cannot destroy our land no further. We cannot have a good soil where you can have everything without going far. But now for them to have water, they have to walk 8 kilometers for them to get water. And by walking with 8 kilometers, there is no security. So most of them, they have been raped. They are raped in their way from getting water. And you can see men who are telling us when we were there last year, most of their children here, they are not ours. And you're asking men why? Or because when they are going to fetch water at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning, they come back at 6 a.m. in the morning. So those, some of the children are not ours. You can see that even the insecurity is there. So why building another dam where you cannot even solve the previous one? So fighting so their voice can be heard. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Salome. I think across all the stories that were depicted in the film and what Salome and Beatrice have said, you can see the same themes recurring. The empty promises of this so-called development that is supposed to bring opportunities. It's supposed to bring, resources to these communities and help them to thrive and prosper. And the reality is always just a context of violence, and none of the promises that have been made by these companies and the government are ever fulfilled for these communities. And it's really a story of disappointment. Back to you, Beatrice. Why do you feel it's important to tell the stories of African women fighting for climate and ecological justice, particularly for those stories to be told by the women in those communities?
Thank you, Maggie. I think it is very important for the stories of women to be told. First of all, it gives a rim light to the entire world. Women stand up to speak on their own on the issues that affect them. So when they share such issues that affect them, they are heard nationally, internationally, and worldwide. So that when a particular nation is suppressing those grassroots women, it feels that it is being monitored by the entire world, and in a way it tends to reduce and find measures of mitigating such impacts that they are causing to the grassroots. And secondly, some of those issues affect the lowest grassroots woman. Sometimes those women lack capacity to stand and speak for themselves. So when such stories are being told, they feel energized, they feel the energy to speak, and they are also able to learn from others that such and such a different community is going through such and such an oppression, and it is a way that they handled it. In such a way, they are able to learn from one another, from different areas, from different perspectives, in order to energize and strengthen on their strategies, how they are handling such oppressions. And also, when such issues are spoken, we learn. For instance, today I'm sharing the experience of Uganda, and we are hearing the experience of DR Congo. We are also hearing from South Africa. We are seeing how different women are organizing. When they organize in such a different way and they succeed, even as the Ugandan or another country is able to advance or adopt the way other countries are organizing, it also gives an energy that women are being listened to. It also gives a feel that women are being looked at in terms of their issues that affect them. So it is a way that we should keep strengthening the spaces, because sometimes it is about increasing the number of voices. You attract allies, so your issue can easily continue being told. For instance, when it comes to climate, you all know that when climate is disrupted, getting food made to walk long distance, securities on the way, sometimes they are climate justice. I think in a way they feel protected. So it is one way we get solidarity with other people, we share experience and learn and unlearn from each other. I thank you.
Everything you said really resonates deeply with the motivation for making the film. I think we really saw that there was a real lack of stories and films about that really profiled the voices of African women and Black and brown African women on the front lines of the climate struggle. And so we wanted this film to be able to be used as a tool and a platform for those voices to be heard and to build the kind of solidarities that Beatrice is talking about. Salome, maybe you can also step in here and particularly to talk about, the importance of telling these kinds of stories, with the Inga case, where there are other continental interests involved, like the South African government and South African finance. And why is it so important to have a film like this so that we can start to make those links?
Yeah, for us it was very important because having the voices of the community, especially outside the province, was very important, because when they are telling you that the electricity will be sold in South Africa, so you wonder, like Africa, why energy when they have one? Why destroying our climate change just for them? But having the voices being heard outside, and we are like this solidarity, like, okay, maybe South African people will hear us and maybe they will join us by the force, and then together we can make this thing stop. Because right now, if you go to Inga, their soil is really, really dry. Like when the rain is supposed to fall down in Inga, they don't have rain like they used to nowadays. So everything is changing. But what I can say is solidarity is the very biggest important thing that us we need, like the women of the community needs, the women of Inga needs right now. If South Africa or other women, like, they can like give that alliance and say, okay, we are going to support the women from DRC, and together we can stop that. We can stop the dam, and it can be okay. But how can they be? How can they know if women did not help to make the film? So the film was very important because the film helped people to watch and understand how Uganda, South Africa, and DRC women are struggling and they are keeping fighting for what is right for them.
Thanks for that, Salome. Beatrice, coming back to you for a second. What are sort of the changes that women would want to see, that the women of Kwataniza, women farmers, like, what are 2 to 3 changes that you want to see, that you'll say that this is the justice that we are fighting for?
First of all, there are several changes that I would want to see, but I will highlight on the most important ones. First of all, we would want to see the involvement of many women in decision-making levels, both politically and socially. You know, when a woman is limited on decision-making, most of the policies, most of the laws, most of the undertakings will suppress a woman. And also, when it comes to access, control, ownership of land, women will remain suppressed, but when they are in high decision-making positions, they will advocate for reforms. They will advocate for improved laws in the country. For instance, in Uganda, we currently don't have a law that allow women who are married, who have been cohabiting and have not been legally married, to own land. So in such a way, they will advocate for such a law to pass so that women can be able to acquire land. There is also need to extend the civil society space. Currently in Uganda, there is shrinking space of civil society, women groupings, where they are termed as being anti-government. And yet, the work they do for the grassroots women is very important. So there is need to extend the space. Civil societies, women movements need to have free space to speak on the issues that affect the local people. I also need adoption of alternative sources of energy. You know, we are overstrained as Ugandan grassroots women when we use firewood as a major source of energy. it is very scarce to get firewood, and also it is surrounded with so many challenges. We have to walk long distances. We have to get smoke into our eyes and throat. So when we adopt alternative sources of energy that are safe, affordable, and clean for women, that will be most perfect. And also, I think lastly, we need to have women that are economically empowered, because in most of our communities, when one is poor, even when you speak in public, your ideas will not be taken. So we need women that are socially and economically empowered to be able to speak in public so that we can advance our issues.
Thanks for that, Beatrice. I think you mentioned a lot of incredibly powerful things, and particularly, that call for alternative sources of energy. I think that's a call across the continent. I'm coming from Zimbabwe, where the government is, despite the recent IPCC report that has shown the impact of fossil fuels across the world, and that it's only going to get worse for all of us, our government is moving even more in the direction of coal. And this is, despite all of the scientific evidence, as well as the evidence that, people have shown of the impact of fossil fuels on our continent, and the desperate need for us to invest in alternatives that are more sustainable and that everybody can access. Salome, I'll pitch the same question to you in terms of the struggle going on in Inga, as well as other struggles against extractivism in the DRC. We know that there are plenty other struggles around natural resource extraction taking place there. What are sort of 2 to 3 things that, women are really fighting for in terms of their climate justice?
Okay, first of all, the women are fighting for renewable energy, because now we do have renewable energies, so we can have those alternatives than having to build the Inga Dam, where we know that the interests are not for the community, the interests are not for the population, the interest is elsewhere. So that is what women are fighting for. I did not hear the other question, Maggie. May you repeat, please?
No, you can. Yeah, you've heard it really well. Is there anything else, like in terms of the vision of climate justice for women in the DRC? What are they fighting for in that sense?
So what they continue fighting for, like I said, first of all, for the renewable energy, so we don't destroy anymore. They say the second thing is like the same thing we are having with mining. So women they are also fighting for it also, because as you know, it's like we are having like the same problems here in Africa. As they continue fighting for the renewable energies. And it's good to know that women of the communities, they know now what is renewable energy, and they are like advocating for it, but themselves, even without having us around. As we all watch the film, we all have the same problems. It's all the same. So I don't want to repeat Beatrice.
Thank you for that, Salome. If anyone from our audience has any sort of questions or comments, we really welcome you to speak up, and you can turn on your camera and unmute yourself to speak. One of the sisters who couldn't make it to be on this panel in person did send her contribution as a pre-recording. And so I'll just ask Rachel or Marissa if you could queue up that recording so we can hear from Medical. Please, may you play Medical's contribution so that everyone can hear her voice as well. Hi, Priyanthi. Please may you ask your question or make your comment.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very powerful film and for some very equally powerful interventions from the 2 speakers. Makes me really angry, though, because this is not a new thing. This kind of thing has been going on for far too long. And as an international community, people have tried to put in safeguards so that communities will be safeguarded. But obviously, those safeguards are not reaching far enough or being only observed in the breach. So I think it's really important to continue to highlight these issues, even at an international level. So just my question was to ask whether any of these, are these funded by the national governments, or are these, especially the Hydro Inga project, and or are they funded with international loans or money from the international financial institutions? Just a question, just to find, because then there is another duty bearer there that we should hold to account.
Absolutely, Priyanti. Thank you for that question. Salome or Beatrice, would either of you like to speak, or else I'd be happy to answer the question?
Yeah, I can just answer and then maybe you can complete it. That's not a problem. Yeah, like in the hydro in DRC, it's not funded by the government. So the government is like looking for, they are like working with African Bank of Development to look for investors so they can invest to the project. But when you are looking for investors to come and invest to the project, that means that the government have no say into it. That means that the investors will take all they need. They will like do whatever they want. So that is also the biggest issue we are dealing with that ourselves not having money to put in the project, but having investors to come and invest in the project without us having any say to it.
Sorry, can I just say, but that is actually not necessarily true. I think it happens because governments are so sort of try to sell the investment at the lowest possible denominator. But there are internationally agreed standards that governments should actually hold investors to. And so I think there is a big conversation these are not things that communities can do, but that the people like ERO or other organizations working more globally or internationally can actually engage with communities to empower communities to recognize that these safeguards exist and insist on those safeguards, because I think governments kind of play this game, right? They want foreign direct investment, so they kind of go to the lowest possible denominator, but they still also have an obligation to look after their citizens. And I think there are human rights instruments that oblige them to do that. So that we need to kind of make sure that they don't violate their human rights obligations just because they want the foreign direct investment. So I think we really need to do more work on that as a global community of CSOs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intervention, Priyanti and Salome. And I think, I absolutely agree with you both, is there are, safeguards in place, particularly, on the African continent, regionally and continentally through the AU, that are meant to hold corporations accountable for any of the projects that are taking place across the continent. But we find again and again that, even the environmental impact assessments that are supposed to take place before a project is initiated are not done in good faith. And communities are not even given the option to give their free, prior, and informed consent for any of these projects. So from the get-go, all of these standards and safeguards are completely ignored and are enabled by our governments because they're getting their money, but the communities, as usual, and as well as the lands and territories, are suffering. Thank you, Connie, who has made a really powerful point in the chat. And Connie, I don't know if you want to say it or I can just read it out. Connie saying, it got me thinking about the push for electric cars in Europe and North America, which depends on extraction of minerals from the global south, and also more generally about how mining companies try to sell their operations to communities as green mining. I'm not sure where I'm going with this exactly. Maybe how to resist co-optation of environmental justice demands by the same extractive companies that we're fighting against. Absolutely. And I think even when we are talking about a green economy, much of the minerals and resources that are required in order to make a green economy possible are coming from communities in the global south. You're going to need, rare earth minerals from Madagascar and the DRC and other countries like that. And so how do you even begin to imagine what a just transition to a truly green economy looks like if you're not talking about sort of that kind of justice in that way, and ensuring, that you're not again continuing the exact same framework of extraction that is harming people and it's harming the planet as well. We're almost close to running out of time. So I'm just going to ask Marissa to play Medical's input, just so that we can hear her voice in the space.
Hi, everyone. My name is Medical Nziba from KZN Kwasomkele. I'm from Siyaphakama Women's Forum. I know the sisters from the film. I'm related to them. The film highlights the struggles that women continue to face in our community. They are still not treated with equal rights as happens with the men in general. It's an ongoing battle that they continue to fight for their voice to be heard by corporate companies in the area. It is important to tell the stories of African women fighting for climate justice in order to make everyone understand that women will not be silent forever. Therefore, their voices ought to be heard when raised collectively about genuine impact as the result of extra activism in the area. This, of course, encourages many other women to join the fight and defend their rights. There is a lot of challenges women are experiencing in their struggle for climate justice, such as gender discrimination, ignorance from government department or relevant stakeholders, and intimidation. The women organized themselves through the local organizations and other support groups, mainly civil organizations. They are beginning to have a dialogue to talk about issues that affect specifically them in our society. Due to lockdown restrictions, they are not allowed to organize protests, but women have been staying in contact to discuss of these issues through telephone calls. The film was released last year and nothing has changed. It is not going to be easily achievable because we have a local mining in the area that supply Eskom. It is my understanding that it will take some time for our country to move away from coal-powered electricity. This issue of climate justice is also a global issue. It will require more powerful countries championing this term in order to make significant impact. It is important to participate in platforms such as Global South Women's Forum because we get to share our community struggles in the process, learning more about improving our own fights for our respective communities. We also build community networks which might assist in funding our community struggles and have ongoing external support. In the same vein, we raise more awareness and encourage more women to stand up and defend their rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for playing Medical's input. We really wanted to have her voice in the space as one of the women who is a part of the South African communities that were shown in the film. We're very glad that she was able to at least pre-record her contribution. We have one more question before we close. And Medical spoke to it a little bit in her input. But I'll ask Beatrice and Salome very quickly, very briefly. Why do you feel it's really important to participate in a platform like the Global South Women's Forum? So Beatrice, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll end with Salome.
Thank you. It's very important to participate in forums like the Global South Women's Forum because we are able to share experiences and learn from one another. For instance, here we are participating from different countries and different continents. We are seeing the real issues that affect grassroots people, and we are able to learn. And we are also learning on how those different women, grassroots women, are organizing towards opposing the oppressions that are taking place. And it also, in a way, motivates the woman in the struggle. For instance, me, Beatrice, I'm in Uganda, but I'm energized when I see other women from DR Congo, from South Africa, and elsewhere in the world also putting to task their local authorities to improve on how they are treating the grassroots women in relation to extractives. And it is one way of building solidarity. The way Medical put it, I feel so much attached to other women in the world. I feel part of the South African women. I feel part of the DR Congo women, as they also feel part of me. In a way, we are building strong solidarity groups and we are being energized and we feel empowered when we speak. Also, there is a way it builds on our knowledge. We understand how different people are being oppressed and how they are trying to challenge such oppressions. And also, lastly, I think it strengthens networking and collaboration. I know I'm in Uganda and in Hoima, but I'm networking and collaborating with different women in the entire world, where I feel that if I'm handcuffed in a way, I can be empowered by other countries, by other people from different world. So in a way, when we strengthen our grassroots networks, when we strengthen our solidarity in national, regional, and international, and worldwide, there is a way we continue resisting all the oppressions that are taking place among women.
Thank you, Beatrice. Salome, do you have some words to add?
This is the big platform where we all come together and hear different countries with different problems. Like when we sit and hear, like when we watch the film, we hear Uganda. The same problem that we are having in Uganda, it's the same problem that we are dealing with in DRC. Although it's oil there, here it's dams, or in South Africa, it's mining. Even here in Congo also, it's mining. So when we are sitting in this big platform and exchange, it gives us motivation to continue on fighting. It's building. It's also, we are building solidarities, and we know we can count on each other to take our voices higher and higher again. And at the rest, I think this was the best moment to let people know, because I think it's not only Africans, even Asia, they are also connected. So it's a very big platform for us to have this film and to share this panel with everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Salome. And I think with that, we're coming to a close. In the chat box, I've included some information on how you can get hold of us at WoMin and find out more about the film and more about the organizing work that we're supporting and the important work of solidarity and networking and alliance building that is necessary in order to fight the many interwoven oppressions and crises that we are facing as a global community right now. And I think that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and your guest, Beatrice and Salome, for the session. This is the second of an 8-part series from the 2021 Global Women's Forum on Sustainable Development, hosted by International Women's Rights Action Watch Asia Pacific. These sessions are available with visuals on the eRaw YouTube page. The link is in the episode notes. Thank you for taking time to listen to the Women Hold Up the Sky, African Women Rise for Climate Justice episode on Sustain267 Podcast. Let's connect on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on our handle at Sustain267 and share your thoughts and comments on the Women Hold Up the Sky film or just this episode. I am the host of Sustain267 Podcast, Batakili Sidze, and the sound engineer is Malehoma Koti. Please subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast to listen to more conversations on climate change and environment through African voices. Take care.
Sustain267.